Alright, welcome back to another web development video where I'll show you how to make modern websites using HTML5, CSS3, and a little bit of JavaScript. In this video, I'm going to show you how to add a service worker to your website. And what a service worker does is it turns your website from just a normal website into a progressive web app, or at least it has the capability to do that. And a service worker is just a small JavaScript file. And what it does is it sort of is an intermediary between the user's request through the browser and the server, where normally our request goes from the browser to the server to get a page and bring it back to the browser. The service worker stands in the middle of that, sort of as a gatekeeper, and looks at that request and says, here's a request, and then the service worker can do something with it. One of the main things that it can do, and I'll show you in this video, is it allows the request to not go all the way to the server, but it allows us to cache website files. The service worker caches files the first time that the person goes to the website. It can cache any files that we want, images, JavaScript, CSS, page files, so HTML files. All those can be cached, so that instead of the person making a request that goes all the way to the server, instead it stops at the service worker. The service worker says, I have a request for these files. It can look inside of our cache and say, are these files in the cache? And if so, then it serves those cached files to the browser instead of having to go all the way to the server to get those files and bring them back. One, this is speed, and two, it allows for offline viewing. So if you say you have a 2 or 3 page website and you cache all of the HTML, you cache the CSS, you cache the JavaScript, it should be able to run that website offline. So the person should be able to see if they've gone there before, the service worker gets installed and then caches the files, and then the next time the person comes, they should be able to not only have the page load faster because it's not having to go all the way to the server, it's right in the browser, making the request, serving the files, but also if they lose connectivity or if they have bad connectivity, they should be able to view the website offline. So that's what I'm going to help you set up today. There's a ton more that you can do with service workers and progressive web apps, but this is like step number 1, 2, and 3 that I'm going to show you today. So first we're going to set up our call in our JavaScript to import essentially the service worker into our main JavaScript file. And then the second thing we're going to do is we're going to set up our actual service worker to do all the things during the different events that the user is going to try to do, as far as it's going to install the service worker the first time the person goes to load the service worker page or your main JS page, because it's being imported in. So it will install it, it will activate the service worker, and then the third thing that we'll do is when the person tries to make an HTTP request, then it's going to intercept that request the second time. The first time it has to just install and cache all the pages. The second time it'll intercept the request. It will go and look in the cache for that request and all the files that are being requested, and then if they're in the cache, which they will be, then we're going to serve that website from there, and we can check the offline status as well. And then the last thing I'll show you is how to set up a manifest, a progressive web app manifest. And what that is just a JSON file that has all of the information about your website or your app. And if the person chooses to add your application to the home screen, then it means it shows the icon that you're going to use for that. it shows the short name that it's going to show, under the app icon on your home screen of your mobile device. There's a little name there, so you can control that name and what it says. And you can also decide when the person clicks on, after they've added to the home screen and they open your app in the browser, how does it react? Does it look like it's in the browser? Does it open full screen so there's no browser Chrome like the URL bar and the forward and back buttons and all that kind of stuff? So you have a little bit more control about once the person puts your application icon onto the home screen. So I'll show you how to set that up too. Alright, the first thing that we need to do is go to our main JavaScript file. I'm using a build system here, and I'll put a link to that. It's called the 20-mile head start. And inside this build system, it uses a gulp task in order to take what's here in my functions file and put it into this app.js. So you can see now these two things are the same thing. So this is sort of the distributed files, and then this is our source file. So we'll just be working on the source files for right now. And I have a repo set up on GitHub that will have all this code on it. You could literally download the repo and put this code right into your project, or you can type it out however you want to do it. You could copy and paste it, I guess, from the repo. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go into my main app file, and let's just go through this a little bit. So what we're going to do here is we're going to check at the top of the file, we're going to check the browser to make sure that it does support service workers. So there's a lot of there are some browsers that don't support it. This has been around for 2 or 3 years, sort of live, and people are using it for 2 or 3 years. So this is not a new technology, and maybe you already know it, but this is a way that you can get it into your application. So first we use an if-then statement or if-else statement. So we say if service worker is in the navigator or in the window in the browser, essentially. So if the service worker is supported by your browser, then navigator dot service worker. And then what we want to do next is we want to register the path to the service worker, file. So all our service worker is, it's a file that we're going to create. It's called serviceworker.js or sw.js, something like that. And then we're going to register it, and we register that like this, and then we would include the path here. So normally you're going to put that into the root of your project. So wherever your index.html file is, that's where you should put your service worker file. So one way to get there is to do something like this, and that would give you the root of your project file. And so we come back and we say then after that, so then we're going to run a function, and that function is going to be we're just going to console log that the service worker is in fact registered. Sorry. So let's get those all set up. Make sure we got everything here that is correct. So if service workers are supported in your browser, then we're going to set up the service worker and we're going to register it, and you register the file path to where your service worker is going to be, which should be in the root of your project. Then once it is registered, then we're just going to console log that the service worker has been registered. Okay, and I'm gonna get this online, and we'll be able to see this eventually, but this code works. So and then, I like to use jQuery, so any of your other JavaScript can be done down here, but as soon as the JavaScript is loaded into your browser, then it will run this check, and then it will load your service worker. And you can see here in our app.js, when I saved, it got brought over. So this is just vanilla JavaScript that's being imported at the top of our app.js file. So that is all we have to do with our main JavaScript file. And now we need to create what's called, I like to call mine sw.js. And I have it already created here. And you can see that this is a service worker. And it's telling you sort of, what sort of features are in this. So what it's going to do is it's going to be offline first. So that means that it's going to look in the cache on not the first visit, because the first visit the person has to install the service worker, but on the second visit and at every subsequent visit, it's going to look in the cache. It's going to see is this online, or I'm sorry, is the service worker running? If so, is there, when the person makes the request with the browser to go and get a particular page, in our instance it would be the index page, and then look in the browser or in the cache first, are the files that we need, so the index file, the CSS file, the JavaScript file, anything that's linked to that HTML file, are those files in the cache? If so, serve them to the user. If not, then we're just going to do a regular HTTP request and bring them from the server. And it also clears out the old cache whenever you make changes to the CSS or the JavaScript. Let's say you're still in development and then you change your version, then it will actually clear out if the person has come and previously cached the files, and they come after you've made changes to your website and you've changed it from version 1 to version 2 or version 1 to version 1.1 or whatever it is, it will do a check and say, is the cache that you have available right now the same as the current cache that we're going to call the name up here. So if it's not, then it deletes everything except for this new cache, and it will download those files and put them into the cache. So let's just walk through this sw.js. This is all pretty standard code. I actually got this from, who did I get it from? Brad Traversy. But he is a YouTube developer, and he does a lot of videos on YouTube. And so I actually have gotten a lot of this, not everything, but a lot of it from the code that he's written. So the first thing that we need to do is we need to initiate the cache name or the version. So just calling it cache name and then v1 for version 1. You can make this 1.0 or you can make it 1.0.1. It could be anything like that. You can call it whatever you want to. If you plan on making a lot of changes, maybe you want to go with this sort of patch version sort of style. But you can call it whatever you want. And then the next thing that we need to do is we need to set up our cache assets. So we need to set up all the assets that we want to cache for our website to go into the cache. And we do that with a simple array. And so you just put the file paths of all of the files that you want to go into your cache. So for us, we're going to do the index file. We are going to go into assets and CSS, and we're going to do our main CSS file. And then we're also going to go in and we're going to do the app.js. I showed you that one already. So it's going to cache the JavaScript, the CSS, and our home page. We don't have any images in our image. Well, we have a couple here, so we could cache these as well, but we don't have to. But if you cache images, that means they're being not delivered from the server, they're being delivered from the browser itself. So that's also a possibility to be able to put those image assets, especially if you have large images or something that you want to sort of speed up the time that it takes to download them, then that would be a really great thing. Maybe you have a series of hero images that you want to be, they're a little bit bigger and you want people on slow connections, or you want people who have no connection to still be able to see them, like they're at the top of the page or something like that, and it would look weird if they weren't there. Then you could put those into the cache. Alright, so the next thing we need to do, we have three things that we can normally do with service workers. The first one is to install it. That always has to happen first, and that's the first time the person lands on your website. And then the next thing we need to do is activate it, so that gets it started. And then whenever there's a fetch event, then that's when the person is doing an HTTP request, and we want to decide what to do with that request. So the first thing we do is we install the service worker. So we add an event listener that's called install, and then there is an event that's associated with that, and we can console log out that the service worker is installed. And then we run the event and we say don't do anything else until we do what's in this code here. So we look at caches, and then we open the cache name. So basically we start a new cache, and that's going to be this v1, and then with that cache we're going to say that we're caching the files. We add all of the cache assets, which is here. So cache is a sort of a key name that's given for the service workers so that you can use that. So we add all of the cache assets, and then once that is finished, then we can run the skip waiting, so we don't have to wait anymore. We can just, once that's finished and it returns true, then we can just move on in the process. And then once that is finished caching all of our cache assets, this will happen the very first time someone comes to our website. Then we run the activation, and it'll tell us that the service worker is activated. And then you can see here that this function removes the old caches. So again, we don't want to do anything until we've run through all of this. And so we look at the caches and then set what are called the keys. That's essentially running, it's sort of looking through all of the caches and getting them set up. And then it looks at all of our cache names. So it could be that the next time the person comes, there's a new version up here. And if you don't clear out the old caches, then you'll just have multiple versions of the same cache. And that's not what we want. We want the newest version to be showing. So it returns a promise. And then for all of the keys, all of the cache names, we want to look at all of them. And we want to say, for all the cache names, we want to map them or sort of number them and look at them. And then the cache creates, we take the cache and we run this function that says if the cache is not equal, so if the cache, as you loop through it, if the cache is not equal to the cache name, which is our current version, if it's not equal to that, then we're going to say that we're clearing the old cache, but also that we're going to return and delete. So the next thing that we do, if this is true, so if the cache is not equal to the current cache name, then we're going to look at the caches and we're going to delete the cache that it's looking at, that's mapping here. So effectively that's going to look at any cache that's been installed and does not equal this one is going to be deleted. And so that should keep all of our caches, the old caches should be cleared out. If the person comes back and changes have been made, then they're going to get the new cache. It's going to recache all of our cache assets, etc. and get rid of the old ones. And then the last thing we do is we listen for the HTTP request, which is a fetch event. And so we're going to say that the service worker is fetching. Let's look at the offline first function. So basically we're going to intercept this fetch event, and we're going to look at it. We're going to respond with this. So we're going to look at the caches, and we're going to match. We're going to try to match the request. So basically it's saying, here's, I just intercepted the HTTP request, and then I'm going to look in my caches. I'm going to see if that request matches something in the cache, and then if it does, I'm going to bring back what's called a cached response. So this is going to be a function. It's going to do something if that is true. So if the cached response is true, then we're going to say that we found it in the cache. And what we're going to return is the cached response. The cached response is the matching files for the request. So this could be all of the files in the request. It could be part of the request. For us, it's going to be everything that we're requesting with the HTTP fetch event is going to be found inside of our cache. So if that happens, then we're going to return the cached response, and that's going to be returned back to the user. If it's not true, so if this match is not true and the request does not match anything in the cache, then we're just going to return a fetch event to go and perform the request that the person originally requested. So that would be whatever .com or /index.html, whatever the URL that the person requested. Now looking at this one, so this is offline first. So this looks first at the cache, and then if it's not in the cache, then it goes and makes a normal request. This one is the opposite. So when there's a fetch event, then it looks at if the user is online to perform a regular HTTP request. So the first thing we're going to do is we're always going to go to the server. But if the HTTP request fails, or the person is offline, or the connectivity is so bad that they can't get to the server, or something should happen with the server, then you serve the assets that are requested from the cache. So normally we're just going to fetch and do the HTTP request. If that fails, this is the catch. So anytime there's a failure in a request, we have a sort of a catch method that we can run. So you catch, or in the catch, in the failure, then you go to your caches, and then you try to match the request. And there's some more that you can do with that, but this is what we would call an offline backup or offline second. And I think it's a little bit more important. Google, they're recommending that we do offline first, which gives the user a better experience overall, and sort of is kind of the reason we're doing service workers in this sort of basic way. So I would try to do the offline first. It's kind of cool anyway to see your site be offline. But this offline backup is also, that way the person is always getting the fresh files, and then from here you can either put the files up here that are the files for your website, or you can even have special offline files. So you have a special offline CSS file or offline HTML file, so that if the HTTP request fails, then the backup is, okay, here's this offline page that tells you a little bit more about ourselves. You're currently offline, and when you're online, we'll check and we'll send you the updated files. I don't think that needs a comma. So there's a lot of different ways to do this here. I'm just trying to sort of get this into your application at this point. So we'll just save that, and you can see that that becomes that actually needs to be put into the root. So this is my production folder. It's called build, and we need to actually take this out of the source folder. So I have a source folder that goes through and it processes all this and spits it out in the build folder. So I need to actually copy that, and I need to paste it up here. And again, it needs to go in the root with my index.html. So I would just paste that in there, and then it's here in the root of my folder. I have my JavaScript file here, so I would actually need to do something like this. I have to get out of this file, out once, out twice. So I would have to do something like that, I believe, in order to get, so I have to get up to this level, that's this one, and then I need to get up out of this level to here, and in order to do that I have to go up another level. So I believe that's how it would work for this particular website. And so we have our service worker file completed, and then the last part is called the manifest.json. Now the manifest is just a JSON file like this, and it has a short name, it has a regular long name. The short name is the most used name, and you would just put, you know, my app, and then maybe you have a longer name for it, or if you have an abbreviation, that would be up here. The short name is going to be used when someone adds it to the home screen, and your icon is there, but it also has your the name of the application underneath it. The long name is going to be used if the user comes back to the website multiple times. They can be asked, would you like to add, and the name here, this app, to your home screen. So that's where the long name is going to be. The start URL is if someone does add it to your home screen, what is the URL that you want people to start at? And normally that's just going to be the root, right? It's going to be your index.html page. But if you had, for some reason, your app was inside of a folder, then you would do whatever the path is to the folder where your application is, and you want people to be able to access it. Normally it's the root. Here you can add a couple of icons. One is 192 by 192, one is 512 by 512, and you would just put the pathway to your assets here. So for me that's assets / img, and then it would just be the name, right? So if I was doing tools.png, this one here, then that would be my pathway from the root. So the background color, whenever your app opens from the home screen, it shows a little splash screen. If it's been a while since the app has been opened, or if it's the first time, it shows a splash screen with your icon. So the large icon, it puts it in the middle of the screen, and this background color is going to be the background color for the splash screen. The display, this is normally probably going to be standalone, but there are multiple things that you can choose here for display. You can do standalone, you can do minimal UI, which I saw, but that's only supported in Chrome. You can do browser, so if you put browser, then that means that when someone opens it from the home screen, then it's going to open it just like it's a regular web page. You're going to have the browser Chrome with the URL bar and the home button and the back button and forward button and all that stuff. Standalone means that it's going to open just like a native application. There won't be any of that stuff at the top. Minimal UI, there's a few like forward and back and home and some different things that people can choose, but it's not the full Chrome at the top. And then I know I'm forgetting one. There's another one, but I can't remember it. So I'll put a link to Google's service workers page, and you'll have access to a lot of this information too. And the last one is the theme color, and the theme color can be any hexadecimal color, and that, if you know on your phone or your device at the very, very top of the screen where it shows your connectivity, are you connected to the internet, are you connected to Wi-Fi, the time, the battery, all that kind of stuff, at the very, that little sliver at the very top, this theme color controls that little sliver. So you can actually change that from the default in Chrome or whatever the mobile browser you're using. You can change that and actually add that in. This color should coincide with, let's see, do I have it here? It should coincide with a meta color. Let me pull that up real fast. So let's see what it's called. It's called theme color. Let's see if we can pull it up real fast here, just to be able to see the code and put it. You would link it to the head, just like you do a meta description or the title of the web page. That's the same place where you would put this, and your theme color in your manifest.json has to line up and equal to the theme color that's in the head of your document. So here it is. So you can see here these websites are all using theme color, and it's just a way for you to sort of individualize your application. So coming up here, you would just add meta theme color and then whatever that theme color is in the content. And now this color here needs to line up with this color here, and that's really all you have to add to that. Okay, and once you save that, you need to save this again. It needs to go into the root in the same place that you put your sw.js, your service worker file. You also need to copy, and you need to paste that into the root. And the last part of that is that you need to connect your website. So just like you have a link here to a style sheet, you need to link to the manifest. So I believe it's called the manifest, and you would come in here and you would just say manifest.json. Let's double check that. Link to manifest.json. Okay, and this at developers.google.com, you're going to find a lot of really great information. They are sort of out in front as far as progressive web apps and service workers. So you can see here that this is what you would add to the top of your page. So it's the relationship is a manifest, and then the H reference is manifest.json. Normally it's going to be in the root, so you would just make it to be in the root of your application. just like that. Save that, and then everything is hunky-dory and good to go. And that is actually all that you need in order to get your web app up and running. So this is actually the website that I've been adding to. So all this code here is being output to this website here. You can see I'm on a local host. But if we go to our dev tools in Chrome, it's Control Shift I on a PC. You can also get there from here if you go to Developer Tools, and that opens everything up down here. So what I'm looking at first is my console, and you can see here that the service worker was updated because we have something called update on reload. So this is really good whenever you're developing the service worker. I'll show you where that is in just a moment. But you can see, so we've console logged all these different things that we're doing with our service worker. Our service worker has been installed. It's cached the files. It's been activated. And then because I've been saving this more than once, it's refreshing the page, and so it's actually finding our elements in the cache, and then it's serving our website from the cache. You can see here that I haven't set up my theme color properly because nothing is not a valid color, and the same thing with background color. So that's not working properly. Let's see if we can get in, and we'll make this we'll make it an obvious color. So we'll make it an obvious color, and we should be able to get rid of that. Oh. You have to remember, I was in my development side over here, so you have to remember to do where it is in the output files, right? Because this is where the website is being served from. It's not being served from down here. It's being processed down here. So I have to do it in both places. You could also just only develop. You could just only develop in your build files as well. But you can see we get rid of that. Error message by inputting a real color. So now we know through our console logs that everything is right. So we're on the fetch. Whenever it's trying to load our home page, it's not going all the way to the server, which it's a local installation anyway, so it doesn't matter. But if it were on a website, you would see that it would be finding things in the cache and then pushing that to the browser. Now that's the console. You're familiar with all the different elements of the page here. If you go to the Applications tab, you can see here that you have a few different things. One is the app manifest, and then it tells us all of the things in our app manifest. So our long name, our short name, the start URL. It even gives you the actual URL link. It has our theme colors. So our theme color and our background color are red. And then orientation we did not set, but the display is standalone. And then you could see if we had our icons here, it would actually show you the icons. So it's Google Chrome is reading our manifest.json file, which is really cool. And then we have our service worker here, and you can see that this is checked for update on reload. So every time the page reloads, it forces the service worker to update and activate it. So it's like you're coming to the page sort of over and over again for the first time. And this helps you to just debug some things and not have to run the cache all the time where you're updating it constantly. But you can see here that our service worker.js, the status is green. That's good. That means that it's activated and running. you can stop it if you want. You can unregister it. And if you unregister it, that means it just deletes the service worker. And then the next time that we refresh the page, it should activate. You could see it was installing our service worker, and then now it's activated and running again. If you want to see what sorts of websites are running service workers in your browser, you can go here so you can see Google Drive, Gmail, Outlook, Twitter, Unsplash, YouTube. So a lot of these websites that you're going to are actually running service workers. So these are all the other service workers from other websites. And then if we look down here in our cache storage and we open this up, we can see that our v1 cache is here. So our main.css, our app.css, and our index.html are all cached. So we have all of our files for our website cached right here, and our cache is doing everything that it needs to do in order to serve our website from the cache. So when I make a request, when I reload the page, it's looking first. That request is intercepted by the service worker, this one here. The service worker goes down to our cache and it says, in this request, does that match any of these files down here? And because it matches all the files, it will take these files and push them back to the browser, so that we are essentially loading the browser through the cache, not through an HTTP request. I do not know if this is going to work. I haven't tested offline using a local host, but I know it works online. So if we do this, then it simulates offline connectivity. It forces you to disconnect from whatever network that you're on. So this means that I don't have any network connectivity. Let's see. Let's try to go to some random page. Maybe I do have connectivity. Let's look. Okay, so you can see here, once I click this, it goes offline, and it's just happening per browser tab. So here in this browser tab, I'm simulating being offline, and then I'm going to try to see if it'll still serve it. So it's given me, I think because it has to be reserved from an HTTPS. That's one of the things with service workers that not too many people tell you about, is that it has to be served from a secure website. So it must be HTTPS, which this is not. This, you can see it's HTTP. So it's not going to work on this particular one, but it will work if you, let's say you upload these files to GitHub and you run it as GitHub pages. It will actually run your application offline. So when I click that off, then you can see once again, that the site comes back on. But that is how to do it. And let me see. I don't have. Okay, let's just do a test here. Let's see if that works. So we go to GitHub. We'll just create a new repository, and then we'll upload the files to the repo. So we'll call this service worker test, and we'll make that public, and testing our service worker for offline capabilities. And then we'll initialize it, we'll create the repo, And then we need to upload files into this repository. So I'll come to my desktop, and let's this is called service worker. I'll come and I'll get my build files. So remember, I want my service worker file, my manifest, my index, and all my assets. And I'm just going to pull that in. And then we're going to commit the changes. Takes a minute. And then we're going to go to our settings, and we're going to set this to be served by GitHub pages. So the source is just going to be the master branch, and then it should give us a link. Okay, so here's going to be our link. I don't know that it's going to be live quite yet, but it might. So it enforces HTTPS if you just use GitHub's links, if you don't use a custom URL. But it allows you to serve the site, you can see, through HTTPS. So let's see if we can get to it yet. Okay, looks like it's going to load. Okay, so we have our website here. It's being loaded from GitHub pages. Same website, and if we look in our dev tools, then we should be able to see our service worker all set up. Maybe. Okay, so manifest.json. It's an unexpected token. There's no token. Maybe this file's not quite set up yet. But you can see our CSS is loaded, our app is loaded. So we're checking. And if we look back here, just to make sure that everything is in. So we have our service worker. Okay, so this is our service worker. It should be working. And we have our manifest.json. So it has all of our information. And then we also have our index file. And the index file is bringing in manifest.json. We can try to see if maybe this is clogging things up here a little bit. So let's make that change. We'll see if that helps. Let's try to reload it. I'm just going to do Control F5 and sort of do a hard refresh. Okay. So now we have a service worker being installed, and it's telling me that it's redundant. Favicon. Getting a 404 request for the manifest. Okay, bad request, fetching the script. Oh, we have some things going on here. This is for our icons, I believe. So it's not going to work out particularly properly. Just because I don't have it actually set up here. But this is how you would go about putting it online. If everything were set up properly. I'm not sure why it's not reading the manifest file. Let's see if I can get that. So it should be in the root. Okay, so we're getting, oh, that would be a problem. Okay, so this is the problem. So I was calling my service worker wrong. Okay. So let me see if I can just change that. Sorry. Let's go into our JavaScript file. Let's fix it real fast. Let's see if this will fix the errors that we're having. Let's just do it like this. And it might take a minute. You can see here that it's still processing that change. Let's serve it fresh from the URL. We'll take a look. Okay, it's still telling me it's getting an error here. Yeah, I wish that would have worked out. But it's not loading the resources. I don't have everything necessarily filled out for the asset/image, and it's trying to get the icon from the manifest. Maybe I could boil that down. So possibly if we get rid of this, maybe that will help. Okay. Alright, well that did help. And it shows here that we're registered, we're installed, caching the files, and the service worker is activated. So if we go to our service workers, we can see that the service worker at our service worker test is, it's activated, it's running. And then we have our cache here. Our cache is being served here. And let's try to see if it works offline. May need to reload the page. Download icon was empty or corrupted. That's true because we didn't have the icon, but it shows all the rest of our things here. So let's see if it works offline. And it does not. Maybe? It is going to serve it. Okay. So I'm not sure why it didn't do it on the initial request, but you can see clearly that we're offline. And it's serving, it's fetching, and then it's finding our files in the cache, and then it's serving those files back to the browser. So this is offline mode, and just to make sure, you can see here under the network tab that it is offline, so we're forcing disconnection here, and If you really want to see, then you can see all of your files that are being served from the some from the disk cache and some from the memory cache. Service network assets. So this is it's pretty cool. It gives you offline capability if a person drops their network connection, or if they just want to browse your site offline and they don't have connection, then they can literally open it from the home page, use your website offline, and then be able to do the things that they need to do. This is how you can use Gmail offline. You can write your message and then send it, and it looks like you're sending it, but in actuality it's sort of capturing what you wrote, and then once you get network connectivity, it actually sends the email forward. So that's what some of these larger companies like Google and Gmail are doing. So something interesting to add to any website. And the last thing I want to show you is how you can audit your website using Google's Lighthouse. So you can fix common problems about user experience and things like that, but when you run the audit on the website, it checks these things. So it checks the performance of the website, but also it looks to see, is this a progressive web app? And then it also has some best practices and accessibility and SEO sort of suggestions. So when you do the Google page speed test or page speed insights, they're using this Lighthouse auditing now, and you'll see a similarity. But if you've done that recently, you'll see a similarity with what you see here after the audit runs. And again, it's going through your website in multiple different ways, and it's just saying this is, these are things that can be improved or not. It's telling me I should run it in incognito mode, and it sort of gives you a rundown of what, how long does it take for your first meaningful paint and the first content paint and that kind of stuff. But it also has a lot of different things that you can check inside of that. And down in this section, this is the progressive web app. So does it load fast? Does it respond with a 200 when you're offline? And it's saying that the start URL is not right, so I'd have to look at that. Does it use HTTPS? That's because we're running it on GitHub, right? And I'm not exactly sure why it's not picking up the service worker, so I'd have to go through some of this. And I don't have an actual image, so it's not meeting this requirement. So there's some other different things. You need to have a large image. I didn't set the theme color of the address bar. So there's a few different issues that are going on with this, but it's meeting a lot of the requirements already for a progressive web app. You can see that I've met some of those requirements, and it doesn't take much to sort of get to the place where you're meeting all the requirements. So that's once you understand what they're looking for in order to call it a progressive web app, then you can get there pretty easily. So hopefully this has been helpful to you, sort of long and drawn out and twisting and turning, but so it is with sort of new technologies. And I've implemented this on my own application called skmmr.news. So this is actually a web application that you can use to look at the news. And if we look at the application tab for this particular website, you'll be able to see the service worker running. And I don't have offline capability for this. I do need the request, but you can see that I'm caching, just the main index file, caching the CSS and app.js. So the first paint for this comes very quickly because it's being served from the cache. But getting the actual news from each of the sources requires, it does require a network connection, at least at this point. So pulling all this data back requires a network connection. My whole computer is running a little bit slower because I'm capturing it on video. So I'm not on a super slow connection, but the video really slows everything down. Alright, so that is how to create the service worker. And if you want to learn more about it, you can go to developers.google.com, and it's under, you could just look up service workers, I think, but it is here. And so /web/fundamentals/primers/service workers, and then you can learn all about it. You know, what are they, what's happening, what does it mean, how can you add the code. Some of the code that I'm giving you is a little bit less, a little bit more straightforward. Maybe there's fewer checks in it and things like that, but if you're using Google's code, it'll work as well. But might be a little bit more complex if you're sort of new to everything. If you have any questions or comments, please leave them down in the comment section below. I'm guessing I probably messed up something along the way, and maybe some things could have been easier, or I could have gotten there a little bit quicker. I also encourage you to check out Traversing Media's coverage of, like, he has a video where he talks about service workers, and it's really excellent, very concise, much more than me, and he's been doing this more and better than me, so I would encourage you to check that out also on YouTube. I'll put a link to his video as well, and maybe it's something that will help you to understand, because he's actually going through and writing the code and sort of explaining everything that's happening as he writes the code. But hopefully this will be something you can use. I'm actually going to put this into a it's in a GitHub repo that you can see here, and I'll put a link to that repo so you can have all these files, and these can just be, you know, starter files for you to be able to use for your offline first service worker. And again, this is sort of generic code that you can put on any website and turn it into a progressive web app. And as you build out more sophisticated things that you want to do with the service workers, then you can sort of stamp that onto different websites and be able to have, you know, single code that you're pulling into a website, or you put it on every project that you do or whatever. And again, it's going to speed up your websites. Google's going to like you because you're using technology that they are interested in and that they're building into Chrome. So that's probably going to be very good for SEO purposes. So especially if you're doing small business websites, small organization websites that are having a hard time getting some traction, you know, doing this might actually lift their SEO rankings. I don't know that for sure, but loading faster, being more user friendly, considering network connectivity, those can only be good things going forward for websites. Again, if you have not subscribed, please subscribe to my channel. I've been a little lax on videos here lately, but been busy at work, so you'll get notifications whenever I post new videos, either in your inbox, in your email inbox, or on YouTube itself. And if you think this is good, share it with someone. That would be great too, if you think it'll be helpful for someone along the way. And if you have any suggestions for me about getting better at this, then I certainly appreciate those suggestions too. Alright, I think that's it for this one. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you again next time.